Hello and welcome to Between Two Servers, the show for multiplayer game developers. With me today, we have Jenova Chen from That Game Company. Welcome to the show, Jenova.
Thank you, Glenn, for having me. I'm very excited to have this conversation.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it. So we have a shared history way back when I was working at Sony Santa Monica. You were fresh out of USC, you did Flower, and then you worked on Journey. And I'm so proud that I got to help you guys in a very small way on that project. And since then, you've gone and made Sky, you've raised $1 gazillion, right? And now your company is effectively unicorn. I mean, it's an incredible story. So today, everybody, look, we're normally talking about matchmaking, client-side prediction, hardcore tech stuff, but I'm really excited to talk to Jenova, a game designer and a studio director, about something much more in the humanities. What is it that makes a game successful, and how do cultural elements across the world determine a game's success or failure, depending on what the people in that region want to play? So Jenova, let's talk a little bit about Sky. What's the story? How did that get started? Let's go through the history.
Sure. So, everything started with Journey. Journey is a very important piece in the history of That Game Company. And when we were working on Journey, that's the first game we ever worked on that has multiplayer, and which, thanks to your help, our team member really appreciate the advice you give us. Initially we wanted to make Journey like the scale of Sky, like an MMO game, but very quickly we know like having one guy to work on the online code would not make that work. So Journey was in the end a peer-to-peer game where we don't even have the money to run the servers because we don't know if the game is going to be successful or not, right? So we need to make a game where even without the server, the player can still have a wonderful experience that years after.
A massive success. I mean, this is a completely distinct experience. When people played Journey, there had never been anything like that in multiplayer before. This idea of having someone randomly show up in your game.
That has a lot to do. Actually, that's related to Sky as well. So back when we were making Journey in 2009, one of the biggest challenge we had to deal with is we want to create a game that really connects people at a social, emotional level. That's what turned us on, because we are That Game Company. We want to push the boundary to deliver emotional experience that people have never had. And so we were like, can we connect to people emotionally? At the time, the industry trend is like Zynga just kind of came out to, I think, went IPO, and there was a time when everybody's like, social game is the future. And so we really wanted to show people that social isn't just about like, competing with your friend to see who has a bigger farm. Social is something, that actually helps people to make their life better. I mean, just like we believe that games with, proper content can help people's lives. So we were looking into this concept, right? Like when you say a human connection happens, it doesn't just mean like, you and I are in a bar and we're having a conversation. In fact, I went to many people's birthday party was filled with people, but feel alone, and so the feeling of connection makes us feel less lonely. But just recently, I looked up on the definition of human connections. It actually says it's these two people having a vulnerable communication, where after the communication, both sides felt they are heard, they are seen, they are understood, and they are valued. And those are the things that's really important to have a social emotional connection. That's why we human beings live in societies. Just having a random conversation online is sometimes even toxic. Sometimes makes you even more lonely, right? And ultimately, having a pure, genuine connection helps you to feel makes you feel better about the world and yourself. That's what we were looking for. And so when we made Journey, we were hoping that if the two player experience something emotionally surprising and overwhelming, that will bond people. Because literally, I was talking to a guy I interviewed yesterday who was in the Marine, and he said they went through this very difficult training boot camp, right? Yeah. It's almost like the experience of playing Journey. It's like the ups and downs, and in the end, they have to climb this very steep hill. Everybody was like crying, but they have to keep moving, even though their body has succumbed to like giving up. And when after they went through such an ordeal together, they have this deep bond. Like he said, sometimes I will go to help my army friends more than just my cousins, right? Like more than my families, and that's because they went through a lot together. And so we built Journey that way, right? And what happened is after the game came out, a lot of people started to write letters to us to say how they had such a profound experience with someone online, and they would really wish they can have that same experience with their wife or with their daughters. And some people told me this is actually the first game their daughter played and finished, or this is the game their wife watched and cried. But they couldn't play with them. It's like the game is the most magical when you are actually interacting using the characters in the world together. So that made us to feel, maybe like we always listen to our fans. So when the fans wrote letters to tell us to start a game company focusing on artistic games, we listened and look where we are today, right? And so when our fans ask us to make a game like Journey, however, could be played by multiple family members, that's when we set off to make Sky.
How is Sky different from Journey? Obviously, it's a completely new game with a different experience, informed by a lot of the lessons and the philosophies behind Journey when you made it. Technically, I understand it's client server now. Is there any other significant differences?
Right. So the game started. We don't know the Sky game is going to be a success. So we're learning from Journey. We like the peer-to-peer. So for the first 3 years of development of Sky, it's all peer-to-peer. And what happened that really pushed us over to switching back to the traditional client server is when the cell phone makers start to like shifting from like 3G to LTE or something like that. And because we know not everybody is going to be on Wi-Fi, because the Sky is going to be a game that's going to be played on multiple devices. So cell phone has to be supported. And a lot of people on a cell phone don't use Wi-Fi to get to the internet, right? And
it's almost impossible. I don't think you can even NAT through peer-to-peer from a phone to another phone.
Nope. That's where we give up, right? Because a lot of people would be like, oh, I'm just on the go. I want to play some Sky. And then your peer-to-peer can't penetrate. That's when we were like, okay, I guess we have to do client server. And to this day, our client server is very much a joke, because what the server does is just send data.
It's a reflector.
It's just a reflector, right?
Yeah, it's all good.
But at its core, we were hoping like cell phone can do peer-to-peer. That's like the first mistake we made on the course of a 7-year deal, making this online game.
Making games ain't easy, man. So tell me a bit more about the architecture behind it. So you've got what really almost looks like an MMO, but it's not really an MMO.
No,
right?
So
how does that work?
So while we work on Journey, because of it's a peer-to-peer, we have a psychological design challenge, which is when multiple people are playing the game, and if one person say, hey, I need to exit the level, like, just help me open this door, let's go to the next level. But the other person is like, I haven't found all my secrets yet, I don't want to go. And then this creates this social pressure, like a
tethering pressure.
Right. And so I got play testers come to tell me, like, what's the point of this multiplayer game? Like, these people are just making me not enjoying the game, right? Because I would rather play it that way, but they want me to finish the level. And so they say, couldn't you just have a separate single player mode? Like that's the most common thing I hear, like from during the making of these games. So we want to make a game where people are naturally will be attracted to each other and would want to work with each other. And so what we learned is, like you played that on the early Nintendo days, there's a tank game which has a 2-player mode, and where you're supposed to collaborate to defend the base and kill enemies.
Yeah.
When I play this game with my cousins, we always shoot at each other, and we will shoot at each other. It doesn't kill each other, but it paralyzes your tank.
Yeah.
So we would try to paralyze someone until they got caught by the enemy, and the enemy kills them.
Okay, so you made a metagame in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens is, like, no matter how collaborative I want, every time we brought people to play this game, it would always end up in that situation. So what I learned, from making the online games and observing the players, is that if you give a baby a gun, the gun will be fired.
Yep.
Because it's a bigger feedback you can get out of it.
Yeah.
And as children, as babies, we are testing the boundary of the world.
Yep.
And if there's a bigger thing we can try,
I've got a thing I can try. I'm going to try it.
Yeah, I'm going to try.
Why wouldn't I try it? Yeah.
So what happens is, if we force the player to say, if you play a game like Left 4 Dead, right? Left 4 Dead is saying, you guys have to help each other to survive. I
love Left 4 Dead, by the way. I think that's my favorite traditional cooperative game. Right. I just love that the game director and the idea of needing to stay together, and like that game punishes you if you don't stay together.
Yeah, if you don't stay together, you die, right? So people don't kill each other during the horde is coming. But I got killed multiple times after the horde has been cleaned. Yeah. And people are just walking to the safe house, they will kill me for fun. Just to pick up my medic, first aid kits. Yeah, that's kind of like when I first heard about this, the setup and the design of Left 4 Dead. I was like, oh, finally a game where I can potentially make a friend. Yeah. And I'm playing Left 4 Dead with stranger. It's still as toxic as hell, basically. Okay. And so that, like this is very much like the tank situation. Yeah, you're supposed to collaborate, but when you're bored, when the option is there,
some random person that you don't know,
they will just shoot you from the back. They're like, oh, that's a joke, right? But it's like I don't take joke that
the way you're playing is seriously, and then you're okay. That's a betrayal. So you have different expectations from different types of players.
So when we design Journey and Sky, we know if we leave a space where people could sabotage or being a griefer, like in the development process, we have made this thing where there is this big door to leave the trap, but it requires 4 people to pull it. Okay. And we have seen situation where if we put 4 players, one of them decide to just stand. Yeah. And then the other people we're like, come on, just do it, open the door. And this person was getting a lot of joy just seeing.
And they would come over and then like maybe teabag a little bit, and then like, I'm not gonna do it.
He never
do dance.
Do it. Right. Yeah. So
act like he's gonna do it and then psych out. Yeah.
Right. They just keep doing this to grieve people.
Yeah.
And so what we learned is, in order to eliminate these type of behaviors, we can't limit the number of players in the room. Like if this guy doesn't want to do it, there's always another person, like who's going to do it. I mean, if your cat is trapped on the tree, not everybody's going to go help you.
So someone else is now going to come into the shared experience and fill that role.
Yeah, so that is why we invented this concept called drop-in and drop-out matchmaking, which is, hey, if you met someone who is not a good person, or who's just simply not available to go explore something with you before leaving the level, that person is going to just leave the level by themselves, right? They're busy.
Yeah.
But we're going to matchmake you with someone who is actually interested in searching for something, like a treasure in this current level with you.
Yeah.
And in fact, when we work on Journey, we were just we're matchmaking based on proximity within the virtual world. Not based on the pings, based on virtual world proximity. And then if you're off somewhere in the corner of the map looking for a treasure, and there's another player thinking the same way, then the two of you will be matchmaking.
Yeah, makes sense.
So that's the kind of the first invention we did during Journey was just matchmaking with physical locations. But we were doing peer-to-peer, so it's always 2 players, right? So the problem is much simpler. When we jumped to Sky, we were thinking about allowing a family to play together. So it's at least 3 to 4 people.
Yeah.
And then the situation gets a lot more complex. Just think about this, right? When you do one-to-one matchmaking, it's very straightforward. Okay, you are here, he is here, and this person is leaving, so disconnect them, connect these 2 guys.
Yeah.
But what if you and your wife are at 2 opposite ends of the same map? And you're in the same game, and this other couple is all with you, right? And do you matchmake you with this other couple? You could have
you have to almost look at the centroid of the 2 people, or even exclude people who've split apart as a party. Right. Complicated.
And initially this concept, like any MMO game, has this thing called party, right? So if you have a party, you could have a situation where one person is in a different level. Then how do you even do matchmaking? Right. So we jumped in a whole new era of like complexities.
You can see top down every person in the world playing Sky on the virtual space, and it's incredible, right? And I was impressed. And from what looks like an MMO, you're actually creating these little islands of players being together, from disparate people exploring the same physical space, but by themselves initially. But when you look at the whole set of people playing Sky, it's quite dense, and it looks a lot like an MMO.
It's funny because we have this concept, we know that they are there, right? But we never see it because the game can only matchmake up to 8 player. So internally, we're building this tool which we can like stitch together all the different matchmake rooms, so you can see literally everybody moving, right? But at any moment with this graph, you can see around you, it's like hundreds, sometimes thousands of people in the same level, and so we have to figure out who gets to match with the least amount of interruptions.
Did you make the space a little less spread out than Journey? Does that make sense? Like, because it makes your problem easier if you have more people together. You can now be more selective about who you match. I'm just curious.
I think the space is tighter than Journey. Definitely. It's even worse because in Journey, when it's so vast, if you matchmake, we actually have this thing called rubber band. Basically, we're trying to avoid anything that would interrupt the emotional experience when you're walking in the wild. Because imagine if you're just walking forward alone, and suddenly a person just popping in front of you, like just by chance, it will ruin the experience.
So they have to come in a subtle way.
Right. So with Journey, we say we have to pick someone who is not next to you. Someone is far enough that you won't see them when they come in. They're just a pixel. Right. And then they just emerge out of the horizon. Right. And with Sky, we just can't do it. We give up because let's say I matchmake with you and your wife, and you are quite far, but your wife is literally right in front of my face. I wouldn't know if I picked the center place of the 2 of you. I wouldn't know where your wife would be showing up. So and like at Sky, we gave up. So we
do you have a fiction in Sky around people coming, like when they materialize in the world? Do they kind of like res in, or how does it work in your mind?
No, we don't have that. People would pop up. It's kind of a unfortunate situation. Especially in Sky, because it's more than 1 player. We have these town squares where many people just hang out there, changing their clothes, and make friends and chat. So if you go to the town square,
so you've got like an attractor. Right?
There's a mass of people there. So if you go to town square alone, because you were previously in a single player situation, and you come into this town square, you will see people just popping. Kind of like the traditional MMO. Yeah. So for me, that's one of the things that I feel like we didn't do as well compared to Journey in Sky. Is just kind of be able to explain everything you see in the narrative. Yeah. That's kind of like the fourth wall. It's like, oh, you're playing an online game, so here's a bunch of people.
Well, but having said that, it's an incredibly successful game, or even more of an experience or a chat room, right? What can you share about the success of it so far? Do you have public figures like the number of people playing it, or any metrics you're particularly proud of? I mean, I know you have incredible engagement and retention.
So I think we're somewhere between 160 and 180 million players so far.
That's amazing. So that's uniques that you've seen so far.
Yes. Yeah.
Very cool.
It's certainly beyond what console can potentially reach, as individual. But what's interesting is we actually see, over 70% of our active players are women who were never console players.
Yeah.
And
so you're opening up a very different to console gamer demographic with mobile. And a female demographic that are very interested in your game.
Recently, we launched on Nintendo Switch. Nintendo actually told us that our game was attracting so many people who were not in their core demographic, like younger women is playing our game. So I do feel like very proud that we have kind of find a new kind of area, like we've charted a new sea in the world of gaming. But if you are like a traditional console player, you probably haven't heard about our game.
So is it a game or is it a social experience?
What I call it is it's a narrative theme park. And there's many stories that could be very touching. Lots of people cry for a good reason. And our park doesn't have stats, so it's not like like an MMO game. You like look at my crit.
You're not going to grind. Number of cries.
Well, the grind still exists because people want to spend time here. We do want to honor the time they spend, so we kind of have to give them something to show that they've been here for 3 years. Right. So the equivalent to like the legendary, molten call, like tier orange items, something like that. But what I'm saying is our game is not a fighting game, so you don't kill anything. And
you're really just socializing with people, having a shared activity. That's engaging. So it's not just a VR chat. It's not just I'm here, like the classic thing you see that all this metaverse stuff going on that drives me up the wall, because inevitably there's like some sort of like horribly cliched town square with like some DJ kind of virtually doing a rave, and like Kermit the Frog over there, and then Homer over here. And it's just like this is not compelling.
That's, to me, it's like the equivalent of a local people's party or carnival versus the Disneyland, right? Disneyland is a theme park, so there's a theme.
Okay.
Anything doesn't belong to the theme, don't stay here, right? That's the thing. And I think Disneyland and Legoland, they're really going to make sure the whole space here is an immersive experience that takes you to a different part of the world. And in the end, these parks is still about telling stories. And that's the thing that Carnival or VR Chat or Second Life, they don't care about, because it's run by the guests, the park. These people's they call them the users, right?
It's a curated experience rather than it's a thematic curated experience by creators, which I certainly can get behind. I don't personally. I'm not into UGC. I don't see the future of Metaverse being blockchain telling me what UGC sneakers I bought so that I can strut around in the local DJ rave in the town square. This doesn't excite me. That's old.
The flea market. You go to flea market, you get your UGC experience. Everybody buying something to sell, right? But that's so random. you can also go to, let's say, Comic-Con, right? Comic-Con has a theme, which is anything comics related, right? And some people will sell stuff there too. It's like a fan creation. That's a much better experience because at least there's a theme to unite them. Or the next level you go to is, it's like Universal Studio or Harry Potter Land or Disneyland, where the shop only sells you things that's related to what is actually in the franchise or in the in the game.
So how long until Skyland is built? We about 10 years out?
So we launched it in 2019, right? So we started
I'm joking.
building.
I mean the physical realization of Skyland.
Physical
Disneyland of Sky.
No, there's no need for it. There's no need for
really?
it. See, the thing is, in Disneyland, you bring your physical body there, right? So you can't fly in those lands. But in the virtual theme parks, you can already fly.
Yeah.
And to me, it's kind of like when I was looking into Second Life and Dare.com back then, being able to fly is a big thing.
Yeah.
But it's just a utility. It's a utility for this online world. But for us, for building the world of Sky, you fly for a reason. There's a narrative behind it. Everything has I don't know, like a fully immersive theme park at some point in the future should be pure virtual.
Interesting.
So you can be like a mermaid, right? But in real life, you can never be a mermaid, right? So that's.
So should I look at the metaverse? I mean, I certainly could get much more behind the metaverse idea of visiting a virtual theme park and hanging out with friends. And when we lived in LA, and like I know we shared like a similar time in LA in Santa Monica. You go down to Disney. There are people who go there every weekend. It's where they hang out with their friends.
There's many people who's working in our company are annual pass holders.
For sure. So let's now sort of take a step back and look at Sky. What has made it so successful? I mean, obviously 180 million uniques coming through it. That's insane, right? You have told me in the past that your retention is directly correlated to engagement between players, good engagements rather than negative engagements.
Right.
You're doing something right. Why is your experience so successful? Is it the tech?
So
is it the client server matchmaking? Is it the reliable UDP? Not so much, right?
It's part of it. So I think the drop in, drop out nature of the service is helping, because when we design, we have a particular emotional state we are going after. A lot of the things that existing
so you have your own director like Left 4 Dead that's watching this and trying to curate an emotional experience.
Not dynamically. We are the architect, right? So when we architect the environment, there are many things people can spoil and be toxic. We're trying to eliminate the toxic behavior through the architectures of the society, rather than just say, all right, you're banned, you can ban, you're just, those banning is just a duct tape on the top. Every now and then some bad people come out and you duct tape them. But we are trying to change things from the roots. So for example, in every other online game, literally every other online game, if you go into the game, there's a global chat.
Yeah.
People will be saying things in the global chat.
Yeah.
Right. And
I can see the problem already.
Yeah. If you go to any online community, you'll be seeing ads. You'll be seeing random people cracking random jokes that probably is not appropriate.
Yep.
And you will see eggplants, coming.
Yeah.
And those are things that the moderator don't necessarily catch, right? So now you're playing a cat and mouse game. What we learned is by analyzing the fundamental sociology and psychology, right? If you give a person anonymous status, which is like the internet, right? If you go to YouTube comments channel, you always see people want to be creative and say the things that arouse most people's response. Okay. So some of them is positive, like a joke. Some of them is negative.
I think this is known as the greater internet fuckwad theory, aka pennyarcade.com. from 10 years ago. It's a comic about it. But I think it's spot on. So anonymity is a big part of this.
It's so anonymity is eliminating social responsibility, right? If you're anonymous, you can do anything which you can get away with, no consequence, right? Worst consequence is your account is banned, which you probably just created anyway, right? And allowing these new accounts to be able to say anything, to broadcast to everybody, is a huge rocket launcher.
Yeah.
And for anybody who comes from real world to a virtual space, their morality do not transfer. Just like when you go from like China, USA to Japan, you're like, I have to be careful here because whatever I know in the United States probably is not the proper social etiquette in this new town, right? So everything is new.
Yeah.
So you kind of reset, and then as a child, you learn these things by pushing boundaries. So if the first thing you arrive in Japan is a big nuclear launcher, like, I wonder what happens if I press this button. You know?
But as an adult, the consequence when you're not anonymous is quite severe for this. So we pull it back in. Yeah.
But then with online virtual world, you cannot recreate your social structures in the real life. So therefore, you're at a very low punishment state, right? And so most of people's behaviors is just by nature more toxic to be recognized. So when we architected the society for Journey and Sky, we thought about this one thing. It's like, if you haven't invested any time into someone, why should we allow you to say anything to them, right? Like, you have zero loss. You can say anything, and you will be very creative at grieving people. I think I would also be that person.
So you now have created a consequence.
So to create a consequence in the video game, the biggest consequence you can create is not death, because you don't die, you just restart. The biggest consequence you can create is time and property invested, you earned, is removed. That's the closest thing to death, right? So what we did is, in order to protect our players, you don't get to talk to someone right away. You have to spend time with someone to build up your trust. Once your trust reaching up to the third level, then chat becomes possible. And to build up this trust requires time investment, currency investment, and both sides has to have consent. So after you've done so much work to reach the point where chat is possible, you don't just start with a FU, right? You feel very.
Oh, if you do, then you're probably just going to lose all of that investment and get. So
it's just like, you know, like we're trying to recreate simulations of social consequences. You know, what do some people say? I'm socially dead, right? Like, I'm repelled by all my friends. Basically, I'm dead, right? Like, they don't want to see me anymore.
It's like that Black Mirror episode where other people couldn't see you. So
quite
severe.
Right. So that thing has its own flaws. As a game designer, the plot is flawed, but, you know, like, imagine Facebook has a downvote, right? So, you know, and I mean, even YouTube is removing the downvote now because things get toxic.
Removing negativity, encouraging positivity. Maybe the negativity still exists, but it's hidden. It's not celebrated. It's not a stat that can be bumped.
Right. So when it comes
setting points for down liking a video.
So when it comes back to what you were saying earlier about the success of Sky, like, we interview our player, it was like, why are you spending like 2,000 hours in our game? Right. And they will say, you know, I mean, a lot of players are from Japan, so they say, you know, in our society, there's a very high pressure from the society for how we're supposed to behave. And I don't feel comfortable to be myself if I'm at work. I can't even be myself if I'm at home, because a lot of Japanese are living with their parents, because Tokyo is a very tight place. It's not like everybody can afford their own real estate.
Is there a similar age-based cultural strata like there is in Korea? Because I know in Korea, of course, there's
similar. Similar.
It's quite severe.
So they say, like, I can't even be myself at school because, you know, if I don't say something I will be outcasted by my classmates. Sky is the only place where I feel safe to be myself and to hang out with people, and I can feel I'm relaxed.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people was appreciating just the relaxation and the safe environment where other people won't be judging them or like harassing them the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I think is unique.
So one thing to note is that Sky is particularly popular in the Asia Pacific region. Do you think this cultural aspect is a big part of that?
Yeah, I think the culture also affect people's habits, right? Like the habits in the United States and Europe is that if I'm a gamer, I want to prove that I'm really a hardcore gamer. I'm a gaming influencer. I will have my big rig set up. I will have the lights. I will have my super gamer chair. Yeah. I'll be on Twitch, right? That's that's commitment to gaming, right? But in Asia, nobody play console games. I mean, even Japanese, like you think, oh, they made Switch and PlayStation, there will be a huge console nation, but they are actually bigger in mobile gaming. Like it's if you think about before iPhone, the most advanced phone is all from Japan, and there's so much games on the phone, and so people are much more used to see gaming platform as like the phone, right? Where in the US we say, oh, gaming platform, that's those consoles. What, you're only playing on PC? You're like nerd, right? Like the mainstream is console, and then there's PC, and then there's mobile, right? So I think because of that habit,
but there's mobile, but they're not real games, though.
They're not real games.
Very untrue.
Yeah, so it's not the case in Asia. Like gaming is pretty much like the AAA games that are on the phone. You're probably playing some of those right now on the phone these days, or on the console. So what happens is there is no concept of like, I'm a console player or a mobile player. If you play games, you probably play on the phone. And it becomes much easier for people to tell their friends to just play together. And we see a lot of players who joined our community was through word of mouth and through like social media like TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. But console game is very different. So I think that's also probably why we haven't really got big in the United States and Europe, because we don't have PlayStation, PC, and Xbox yet.
Do you think those will be very large platforms in Europe and America? The intersection of the sort of people who want to play your game and the people on those platforms. Do you think that's a fit, or do you just think that they would be exposed to it and then you would get a good amount of retention from those people?
I believe so. Because the game we made in Sky is no different from the game we put in Journey. Like we are a console game, engine, modern graphics. Biggest online concurrent players. We have over like 1 million concurrent users, right? Like, and like this is all high tech stuff. Like it's not like a cheap phone you made on a 2D application. So but right now the culture is it's spreading much faster in mobile native countries.
Okay, very cool. So Jenova, where do you go from here? What's next?
Well, I guess the first step is, we are trying to get our game on the console now. So hopefully we could, actually let our players who love our console games to experience this game in the platform they prefer. And it's interesting about the theme parks. Theme park isn't like a premium game. It's like, all right, you launched this game. And the game was very well liked. Now what's next? The game as a service is kind of like the new term. If you open a park, right?
It just keeps going, and you just keep adding new narrative experiences, new emotional experiences.
Right, because that's what the people in the park wants, right? Like you kind of like created the space. Now people live here. Some of the people literally live there, and they want the park to have more stuff coming.
Yeah.
And they want more features. So we feel obligated to keep tending the garden.
Yep.
So now we are working on our next game. But from now this perspective, the next game is going to be another theme park.
Yep.
And so that is currently happening. We're tendering one garden and we're trying to build another garden that has slightly different flavor.
Yeah. And Disneyland and you got Disney World.
Right? Sure. I mean, it's not like Upgrade, but it's a different style. It's more like it's more like Animal Kingdom versus Magical Kingdom.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think you'll get a lot of crossover from one player base to the other?
Yeah, that's what we expect, right? Like if you already have friends you made and you walked in this park and the same developer they made a different park next door.
Can you present it so that it feels like two different experiences within the same park? I wonder. I don't know.
How do you feel about the fact you have Xbox friends and you have multiple games? You would jump on the game with your friends.
I don't like that. I want to have one set of friends. You know what I mean? Like I kind of feel like, my friends are my friends, and I'd like to have no friction and no limitations on crossplay. I dislike the platform gatekeeping personally. So.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what we are thinking is, if you already made friends, we won't like remove them.
Yeah.
So when you play between the two games, your friends are your friends. So there are certain things that will be carried through. I know in Disney World, you have one wristband and then you can go to any parks you want, right? And the currency also carries. So I feel like those are the things we're thinking about doing for our future games, so they can just, the social nature of our game kind of needs to not be disturbed, basically.
Yeah, for sure. So quick question. What do you think about all the metaverse hype that we've seen in the last year, being someone who for the last years, for all intents and purposes, has already created one?
Initially, I just thought, oh, great, another kind of acronym, like buzzwords like, edutainment. Or,
it's almost meaningless at this point.
Gamification, and Metaverse. It's like our gaming industry is always like, we've been doing this for ages. Why is this suddenly an important thing? So again, the third time. So I'm not surprised. But every time these type of things happens, people outside the industry get excited about gaming. I think it's a positive thing. Yeah,
it's a positive thing for the people in the industry who
we'll
deeply care about these experiences. People are. It really. I mean, look, I've spent more than 25 years of my life working in the industry in one form or another, and I wanted to do nothing else when I was a kid other than to make games. And I know you're the same, right? Like this is a form of expression and something that deserves to be respected as much as any film or any classic piece of literature or classic artwork. Like this is perhaps even the medium of our time.
Art always inspires people to build the real thing. Look at the iPhone right now, right? So, and to me, like one of my friend has just saying, like, whatever your parents hates and despise, in 20 to 30 years will become national treasure. Yeah. Right? Like Hollywood film is now national treasure for the United States. Yeah. Comic books is now become national treasure. Yeah. Right? Like back then, what does your parents say about comics? And
you remember when I was growing up, the Beastie Boys were like cutting edge punks. Now it's like the venerated Beastie Boys, the classic.
Sure.
Like it's like, come on, guys, the Beastie Boys. They're a bunch of idiots from Brooklyn, right? National treasure. Yeah.
So for Bob Dylan, for video games, my parents certainly have been trashing this thing to be the equivalent of toxic drugs, addictions. It's all the bad stuff they can think about. But in 20 to 30 years, those people who grow up with those toxic things become responsible adults, and they want to make things that's worth the respect. So the shift will happen. I think it's already happening. So
yeah, for sure. Super interesting. So let's say someone wants to work with you on Sky or your future games. How can they do that, Jenova? Are you guys hiring?
Yeah, we are hiring. We actually have a lot of struggle to handle the number of players online. Right, just
that's incredible.
yeah, it's
back end engineers. You're hosting your back end is in AWS. I understand.
Yes, we are on AWS, but now we're trying to slowly offload expensive AWS services to a better solutions because even though I was saying earlier we're joking about like our server just passing data around, right? Like, passing that many data to many players.
IO bound is the thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Very cool. So there's some real engineering behind this, and any engineer watching this show, that game company needs to hire good back-end engineers. What about designers and artists and so on?
Yeah, so we're seeing people around the world playing this game, and we're trying to provide a responsible and a respectful services to the players, right? So we just literally turned on free translation yesterday.
Awesome.
Because lots of players will see people who don't even speak their language, and we want to see, if we can give them the help to connect with people from different cultures and backgrounds. We're also trying to level up our security because after all, even though initially the griefer can't be like toxic in our game, eventually the bad guys is the bad guys. Right, so we need to catch the bad guys as well, and so we're looking into a lot of the AI and machine learning to use our data to figure out like who is the bad guy. Can we potentially catch them before they perform any crime or abuse? And we also have many people who's playing simultaneously, so we're trying to figure out if we can improve the matchmaking. So that they're more likely to meet people that's going to give them a positive experience.
This is one of those things that I call like it's a Netflix problem. Do you remember when Netflix ran those competitions for like, if you can improve our recommendation engine by more than whatever, we'll give you $1 million and we'll hire you, right? That this problem never ends. Like the thing that you're working on could be worked on forever with an infinite amount of money. Like it doesn't end. Because there's always a better way to match people together to get a better connection, to remove toxicity, and to get some sort of an emotional content there.
Yeah,
you can make that as complicated as you want forever, right?
That's true, but it's also a infinite game because if you improve these systems, it helps one game, it helps your next game.
It feeds back in.
It could also help your friend's game if you kind of provide a service to your other friends and allies. So it's not just building something for one game, it's building a service for the future generation of, if you want to use the word of Metaverse, right?
Yeah.
Isn't any online community needs better quality matchmaking and better quality moderation?
Yep.
And just like, let's say, jumping 10 to 20 years, right? Like when Metaverse is finally here, like these people are still debating when it's going to be here.
In virtual reality as an overlay world or as an immersive experience, I fully believe that it is coming to. No question.
Right. And in that future, who do you think will be the most popular Metaverse? Is it Disney? Is it ESPN? Or is it what you call the mixed martial arts?
Yeah.
Like ultimately, I still think that the most successful.
So it's themes and fan bases.
Right.
Really, the currency is that.
Yeah, okay. Like Metaverse ultimately is kind of like.
I know the answer. The Comic-Con Metaverse.
Right, the Comic-Con Metaverse. Yes. So why is the Comic-Con Metaverse so successful?
Because it's the combination of everything, and it's curated towards a common theme.
And it attracts people of all ages and genders, right?
Okay.
So the most biggest metaverse is going to be emotionally relevant of people of all ages.
Yep.
And when you have people of all ages in one space, you got like, hey, my kid is talking to that random person's dad. Is that person a pedophile, right? Or my daughter is talking to this kind of.
It's a real real society with all of the consequences of a real society because of that spread on age and then all the concerns. Yeah.
Right. So that's the concern we have today because we have an all age, metaverse, and we have to be very responsible for the parents, take care of the children, and matchmake the teenager to the right person. Yeah. And so I just thought this is something that in the future is going to be even more needed than current. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Jenova, amazing insights into what you've learned over the last decade plus. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge today. So to apply to work at That Game Company, we'll put an email up on the screen. And Jenova, thank you so much for your time today. It's been awesome chatting with you.
Thank you, Glenn. I thank you for having me here, and thanks for broadcasting our company and our needs for us. Yeah,
awesome.
I really appreciate it. Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah,
everybody, have a great time. See you later.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
See you. Bye bye.
Here's the hard truth: the internet doesn't care about your game. After all the blood, sweat, and tears you put into making your game, you launch, and some players get terrible network performance. What can you do about it? Build your own internet? This is why we created Network Next. Network Next is a radically new way of linking networks together. It's a new internet. One where networks compete on a neutral marketplace to carry your game's traffic. Network Next puts you, the game developer, in control of the network. We monitor every player's network performance and you choose when to accelerate them. Not only will you see better network performance for your players, you'll also have the security of knowing that if one network is congested, we switch to another in seconds. Now you control the network.